so what is the preparation phase? And I would tell you that 99% of the anglers I talk to completely skip this. If you pull up to the boat ramp on Saturday, launch your boat, start your motor, head out to the lake, and look at your buddy and go, well, where we're going to go, you're done. You're defeated. You're not going to have as good a day as you have. A good Saturday fishing trip starts on Tuesday or Wednesday, right? There's this little thing called the internet. It's probably going to be around for a while, so you might want to learn how to use it, right? Lots of really, really good information out there. You need to start preparing your trip before you go. It's amazing to me how many guys on Friday night get on one of our Facebook pages and post, anybody catching any fish in Detroit River? And there's been 750 posts over the week of where guys are catching them and how they're doing. But nobody takes the time to pay attention. Preparation starts before you get on the water. Gather as much information as possible about a body of water, not just what's going on right now, but the whole body of water that you're going to be fishing. Good information is available. Where can you get it, right? Bait shops, websites, fishing articles, seminars like this, talking to other fishing guys, talking to people at the ramp. Get some information generally about the lake and then specifically about what's going on. One thing I will absolutely right now tell you, always make sure you have good lake maps. I know we've got some fantastic mapping. The new C-Map stuff, the Navionics stuff, which is Sonar Chart Live. We've got Insight Genesis, or the C-Map Genesis, allows us to actually create a map and see bottom composition and weed growth. I get all that. But you can't see on a 12-inch screen in big area like you can on a map. So there's something about taking a paper map, holding it down or looking at it and going, aha, there's a major point. There's an inside corner. There's a steep drop off. You can't necessarily see that, especially big picture, on your machine. So having maps is important. And don't just have one map. This is one of the things that I learned tournament fishing. If there are 15 maps, maybe by 15 different companies for where you fish, buy all 15. Because every one of those is going to have something different. I fish the Great Lakes a lot, and I use those big roll-up nautical charts. Why? Because those were designed for ship traffic, for commercial traffic. There's things on those, especially little pieces of structure, tiny spots of little rises in the bottom that are close to the shipping channel that never show up on a fishing hotspots map that's made for fishing. Because the fishing hotspots map is a general fishing map. That navigation map is made for navigation. There are things on that map that don't show up on your fishing hotspots map. So if you've got 3 or 4 good map sources for your body of water, get all 4 or 5 of them and have them. You might not need to have them in the boat, but you definitely need them at home for your preparation, your planning before you get on the water. Other thing I would tell you, for example, like Fishing Hotspots has 3 maps for the Western Basin of Lake Erie. They have one that covers the Western Basin, basically from the Michigan shoreline over just past Lorain, Ohio, or Vermilion, Ohio. So it covers a lot of the Western Basin. Then they have one that just covers the islands, so the Bass Islands area, so you get more detail because you got the same size map, smaller area. Then they have another map that covers in detail all the major reefs out there at Port Clinton. So you want to have all those because you can see where the reefs are on your Western Basin map, but you can't get the 1-foot contours and all the little subtle details of that unless you have the reef map. So spend a little bit of money. Maps are cheap, 12, 15, 18 bucks at the most. If you've got 4 or 5, 6 maps for the area you're fishing, make sure you have them all. They're going to help you catch a lot more fish. All right, so what things do we need to learn about a lake? Let's say we want to get better this winter, so we're going to try to get some more information about a lake we fish, or we want to fish a new body of water we've never fished before. Maybe we're going on vacation. What do we need to learn about a lake? This is all stuff that I used to do when I used to travel the country tournament fishing. A couple things you need to know. What type of bait lives in the lake? If you saw our 8 steps to catching more fish, or you watched our bait fish DVD, you understand how important bait is. Fish are always going to be where the bait is. You have to know what kind of bait lives in your lake before you can make a decision on where the walleyes are going to be. Okay? So understand what kind of bait fish live in the lake. I like to go back to the last 2 or 3 DNR netting surveys. What's the game fish to bait fish ratio? I try to avoid, every year I try to fish at least 2 new lakes I've never fished before. I try to avoid bodies of water where the last netting survey or 2 shows a whole lot of bait fish per acre and not a lot of game fish. I'm going to have a tough time catching fish. Those fish have all the bait fish they need. I like to see situations where there's a lot of game fish per acre, not a lot of bait fish. That means there's a lot of fish, they're hungry, they're aggressive, a lot easier to catch them when they want to bite. So pay attention to that. What type of cover or weeds are in the lake? How deep does the weed growth grow, right? That's important. Weeds hold fish all year, guys. If you don't learn anything from anything that we do, learn that walleyes live in the weeds 365 days a year, especially in the heat of summer. So if you've got weed growth, good quality green weed growth in your lake, you're going to have weeds in there. Is there wood cover? Is there rocks? What's on the bottom? What is there to not necessarily hold fish, but draw and hold bait fish? How deep do the weeds grow? That's one of the questions that I ask right away when I go to a body of water for the first time is what depth do the weeds stop growing in summertime? Absolutely critical. A couple things happen with you have that number. You know where the deep weed edge is, so you know that you can probably follow that deep weed edge, find the biggest major point that sticks the furthest into deep water. Now, I'll guarantee you, if you find that, the deep weed edge on the longest point that sticks the furthest into deep water, you'll catch something 5 minutes after being on a lake. There's always fish on that part, that piece of structure in a lake. The biggest thing is fish, just like game animals or birds or anything that lives in nature, they love edges. And weeds stop growing at a certain depth because that's where the sunlight stops penetrating. So that's an absolute edge from light penetration to no light penetration. So if you know what depth that is at, that's going to be a key depth. Even as fish move off shallow water, and maybe they suspend over 30, 40 feet of water, that number of where the light penetration stops and the weeds stop growing is going to be a critical number when those fish suspend in open water. So it's an important thing to know. What kind of water clarity is in the lake? Does it vary? Is it the same? Is it tannic acid? Is there a little bit of color to it? Do we get a thermocline in the summertime? Remember, walleyes aren't going to penetrate the top edge of the thermocline very often. That helps us determine how good the lake is going to be in the summertime. And then if you want to really get into it, you do some research. You can ask around. You can go on the DNR websites. They have all this information in their netting surveys. What's the average and maximum size of fish I can expect to catch? Don't go to a lake where the maximum fish that was netted by the DNR the last 5 nettings is 21 inches and expect to catch a 10-pounder. Not going to happen, right? So kind of get some basic general ideas about your lake if you want to become better. Even on a lake that you know very well, if you know these things, you're going to be better at fishing that lake. All right, things to talk about daily. And remember, look at guys, we have not left the house yet. We're still sitting at home. We're still putting together a plan for Saturday. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday maybe. We're putting a plan together. We're not even on the water yet. We are planning our trip, getting ready to go. Right? So some things I kind of look at. What's the wind speed and the wind direction for the past few days? That's important. I can't tell you how many guys get on the water on a Saturday and go, where did all these waves come from? The wind forecast was 5 to 10 from the southwest, and there's 3-foot waves. Well, yeah, because it's been blowing 40 from the north for the last 5 days. Just because it's going to blow 10 from the southwest on the day you're fishing doesn't mean that that weather prior hasn't affected the water, the waves, and more importantly, fish location. So don't just look at wind location, get up in the morning and go, oh, it's going to be good. You need to know what's happened a couple days before. Water temps and water clarity. I like to get on the satellite overview on the NOAA website and see the overview, especially on the Great Lakes. What is the water clarity? Where's the green water been pushed? Where's all the dirty water? I want to avoid that. I may not launch it where I think I'm going to launch because that water is too dirty. We're 20 miles down the road. We got access to clean water. So I may adjust my day. Water temps in the spring and the fall. Where is the right water temp? Wave direction and height. Can I fish in my boat? Is it safe? Is it going to be comfortable? Is it coming from a direction? If I use a different ramp, I'm going to be sheltered. Pay attention to all that. This is a big detail one we're going to talk about a little later this year. We'll have a seminar out on dealing with surface and subsurface currents. Guys don't pay enough attention to current. It doesn't always go the same direction as the waves, especially subsurface currents. And it can affect how fast and what action your bait has 10, 12, 15 feet below the surface. There may be reasons you're not catching fish, and it may not be that the fish aren't there. It may be that the current is not letting your bait work because you're actually trolling down current, not going fast enough. So start paying attention to that. We'll show you here in just a second. There's ways to get all this information online sitting at home. And then again, like I said earlier, look at wind, waves, weather, and currents, not simply as what's going to be happening the day I fish, but what has happened in days previous to when I'm going to go fishing, and how is that going to actually affect what's happening the day I go. I have a simple statement about wind, waves, weather, any of that stuff. The longer it is the same, the better fishing is going to be. I like consistent weather. Fish like consistent weather. I don't care if it's cold, windy, nasty, and crappy. If it's been cold, windy, nasty, and crappy for 3 days, the fish are biting. Fishing's going to be good. What fish don't like is a change from one to another. Even if it's from bad, what we would perceive as bad weather to good weather, fishing's going to be off. Fish don't like the change. The further you are from that change, the better the fishing's going to be. Or the longer the stability's been there, the better the fishing's going to be. So don't just look at the weather based on what it's going to be when you go fishing. Look at how the day you go fishing's weather actually compares to what it has been the last 3 or 4 days. And again, we're going to show you how to get online and get all that data. Again, we haven't left yet. We're still at home. Wife's watching Dancing with the Stars. We're actually planning to have a better fishing trip. Okay? So here's our website, walleye101.com/plans_a_trip. That takes you to a web page where you can get all this information. We've got the wind and wave forecast. That is the NOAA marine forecast you're familiar with. Buoy data. If you want to know what the height of the waves and the speed of the wind and the direction of the wind has been for 4, 5, 6 days, you can click on this buoy data, find a buoy in the Great Lakes, and you can go back up to 48 hours and actually look at the records and actually see when the wind changed and where it's been blowing. I use that all the time when I'm fishing. There's a link to the satellite image, gives you the overview and actually shows you the water clarity. Water temperature is an overview of the water temp. There's some webcams on the Great Lakes if you want to see what the wind is really doing. And then my favorite site is probably this Great Lakes Coastal Forecasting. This allows you to see the weather on all the Great Lakes, wind, wave, height, wave direction, surface current, subsurface current, 7 different parameters. And you can see them now. You can go back 4 days, and you can actually watch a forecast 4 days. So you can get 8 days of data before your trip and actually see what's going to happen during your trip. Actually get that on here and actually make a good plan and have better decision making before you go. And then we've got we'll talk about this later, this is our fish catching tracking sheet, so you can actually record the fish that you catch. All that's on our page. Go to walleye101.com, click on the Plan a Trip radio button right here. You're going to go right to this page, and you're going to be able to get all this. We do a seminar on how to use all this data and how to put it all together when you're planning a trip that you can pick up from us too. So, but just know that page is there. It's a great page to use for resources. Okay, so we're starting to plan. We're starting to put together our preparation. Another thing I like to do if I'm going to a lake I've never been to is I like to call a couple people that fish it, be it a guide or a local bait shop, and I like to ask some questions, but I like to ask the right questions. And here's the questions I want to know, okay? Let's say I'm going to go out fishing Saturday to a lake I've never been to. I've done some preparation, and now I'm going to call the bait shop on, let's say, Wednesday, right? A couple of things about bait shops. Don't call first thing in the morning. They're usually pretty busy. Don't call on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday morning specifically. Kind of call middle of the week, middle of the morning. Most bait shops aren't that busy. It's only going to take 2 minutes, okay? But you need to ask the right questions. Ask the person you talk to, what part of the lake are the fish biting in? And that can be as simple as they're in Hoochie Hoochie Bay, or the northeast corner is really good, or they're catching them off of Linwood, whatever the case may be. But that lets you take a big piece of the body of water and start to narrow it down to a fishable chunk. So what part of the lake? The next thing I like to know is how deep of water. You know what? They're in Hoochie Hoochie Bay, and most of the fish are coming out of 20 to 22 feet of water. Well, I've just taken a big lake and made it a very, very small piece of water, right? 20 to 22 feet of water in Hoochie Hoochie Bay is not a lot of water. So I've actually started to take this, where do I fish, to, okay, here's where I need to concentrate my time. Then I want to know how deep are the fish. And this is the key. These 3 things right here, guys, should dial you in to be on fish fairly quickly when you get on the water. If your fish are coming out, let's say they're coming out 20, 22 feet of water, and the guy says they're right on the bottom, that tells you fish aren't very aggressive. You're going to have to fish vertical presentations, maybe bottom bouncers, maybe do a little bit of jigging, whatever the case may be. Fish probably aren't going to be moving a lot. You're going to have to find these peak times when they bite. They're in 22 feet of water, and they're 12 feet down. That's what we want to hear, right? Now we've got catchable, aggressive fish that are up. They're chasing bait. They're active and aggressive. We're going to be able to see them very easily on sonar. And we know that we aren't going to need to fish vertically. We can fish fast. We can fish horizontally, spoons, crankbaits, crawler harnesses pulled fairly quickly, right? So just those 3 questions. What part of the lake shrinks it down to a fishable piece? How deep of water and how deep are the fish gives you all the information you need to start putting together a good fishing plan, okay? Don't need to ask a lot of questions, right? Where are they at? What's the waypoints? Just basic questions. And then if you got a few extra minutes, ask the guy at the bait shop, hey, you got a couple minutes to talk. I want to know what size fish most of the guys are catching, how many fish a day, and then ask them what the best presentation is. I guarantee you, if you've done any homework at all, you get these 3 answers, you should know this answer. That should automatically come to you and go, okay, that's what I expected. Okay? What size of the fish, how many, hey, sometimes you go on vacation and all they're doing is they're catching 35, 16 inches every day. That's okay. Just don't expect to catch a giant. Understand what's going on. Get your preparation right so you can get your planning right and understand what you're going to catch. Okay? So that's step 1. That's preparation.